Another Boston Bruins player announced his retirement today, which leaves the team in an awkward situation. We'll discuss this and much more coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. Hi, I'm your host Casey alongside my co-host Mark Pye, and welcome back to Hattrick HQ. That said, let's get right into the topic of this video, which is another Bruins legend hangs up the skates. And yes, if you were tuned into the news today, you would have seen that Boston Bruins center David Krejci is retiring from hockey. He announced on the team's social media accounts. Krejci, 37, has spent the entirety of his NHL career with the Boston Bruins after they selected him in the second round in the 2004 draft. He finishes with 786 points in 1,032 regular season games and sits ninth on the Bruins' all-time scoring list. The right shot center's best output was 73 points, which he achieved in 2008-2009 and 2018-2019 seasons. Krejci also released a statement on his social media today, and it was on Boston's social media as well, just talking about his whole career in Boston, thanking the management staff and thanking the organization for keeping him there for all those years. Obviously, a really dedicated player, stayed with one team his whole career. He also goes on to thank the fans and about his talks about his 3 Stanley Cup Final appearances and eventually winning one with that 2011 team. And also here he goes on to thank his teammates, talking as most of them started as co-workers, but they ended off as really good friends. He thanks the coaching staff as well as his agents, his parents, and his brother. And they also go on. He goes on here to thank his wife and his kids for supporting him throughout the years. And he actually says he wants to thank the media, which I thought was really interesting because we don't see that very often. But he said, "I really appreciate all of you, even if I don't like speaking too much." Which, David Krejci, man of few words, but. He just thanks the city of Boston, the fans, just for supporting him throughout all the years, and it's just great to see that from such a class act guy. Mark, it sucks to see another legend hang up the skates here at the end of the season, but obviously Krejci's had such a great career. What are your total overall thoughts on David Krejci's career and his retirement announcement today?
Well, you've seen him with the Bruins his entire career. He was always that 1-2 punch with Bergeron being on the top line, and Krejci always anchoring the second. You've seen him win the Stanley Cup in 2011. He was a huge piece for that run. He's a producer. He's a great two-way center, and overall, I think it's a huge loss for the Bruins at this point.
Yeah, I have to agree. Krejci has been on Boston his whole career, which me as a Habs fan, you as a Toronto fan, have grown to strongly dislike the Boston Bruins over our lifetime. But Krejci and Bergeron, both guys, have been players who I've respected. Even though they're on the opposite ends of the ice, they're both class act guys, and it sucks to see these guys hang up the skates because the league's going to look very different without those guys in it. Especially the Boston Bruins are going to look really different when you're watching a game with Boston. You don't see Bergeron or Krejci taking the draws. It's going to be really interesting this year. But one thing I want to ask you, Mark, is do you think Krejci is a Hall of Fame candidate?
So that's a tough one. I think there's a strong argument to have the Bruins retire his jersey. I mean, he's been there since when he was drafted in 2004. He was a huge piece, and even with the winning the cup, I mean, he was the anchor of the second. He's a mentor for the team. When you think of the Bruins, you think of Marchand, Bergeron, Krejci, these type of guys, and I think it's hard not to see him in some way brought into the organization as either in the rafters or just in a front office kind of role.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there. Obviously, a guy who now resides in Boston, obviously been there his whole life since moving over, and he's been there since 2004. So maybe in a couple of years, maybe if he's sick of relaxing at home and he wants to get back out there, we might see him come in a front office or maybe even a coaching role. I think David Krejci would be great in a coaching role. I think he's a guy who sees the game in a different way, and I think just be having him there on the bench, like coaching these young guys, and even if it's at a trainer or like assistant coach type of role, I'd love to see that for David Krejci in the future. But the biggest thing to come out of this news today is where does this leave the Boston Bruins, which is our second topic of this video. Like, this leaves the Bruins in such a rough spot. And in the Athletic today, they talk about what does Krejci's retirement mean for the Bruins. And they say here that they lose a gifted scorer, a veteran leader, and a lifelong Bruin. Teammates credited Krejchi for being cool in all situations and keeping the room loose with his dry sense of humor. But the biggest effect I think Krejci is going to have here is on David Pastrnak. Obviously, last year and since Pasternak's been in Boston, he's been that guy who he's been playing with his whole career. So it's going to be weird to see a Pastrnak without Krejci, even though he's coming off that 113-point season. It's going to be a different look for Boston this year. I really hope Pastrnak still can play up to his level. I don't. But when you have such a veteran presence out there on the line with you, it's going to be tough to come back for that. I think he's going to take a little bit to adjust, but I think he should be fine. But they also go on to say here that Krejci's retirement cannot be viewed in isolation. It comes after Bergeron made his own exit in late July, and it leaves the Bruins significantly underpowered at center, which is what we talk about here. Like they say that Pavel Zacha, formerly the number 2 left wing, will be first in line to take Bergeron's and Krejci's shifts in the middle. Zacha set a career highs in 2022-2023 with 21 goals and 36 assists. He was one of the 3 Bruins players to dress for all 82 games. The 26-year-old is fast and committed straight line puck pusher. Zacha has an excellent shot, and obviously he's not going to step up to be as a guy like Bergeron or Krejci, but he is a great guy that can probably step up and get a few more minutes. Obviously, an Ironman played all 82 games. I think he'll have a great season for them, but they also go on to say here that Charlie Coyle will have to move up to the second line now, and he's a do-it-all center, and it's just a weird situation for them to be in America. I know it's going to be a different looking Boston Bruins team this year, which change isn't always bad, but when you're coming off that President's Trophy win, it sucks to see 2 of these veteran guys who've been with the Bruins their whole careers go down. Like, where do you think this leads the Boston Bruins?
Well, I mean, I had seen the situation when Bergeron retired. You almost could feel that Krejci was leaving with them. Like I said earlier, they've kind of been together this whole time, and I think it's fitting that they both left. But now down the middle, that's the hardest part for the Bruins. I mean, this league, you need strong centers, depth, and kind of leaves in the situation. You have Pavel Zacha, you have Charlie Coyle, and a guy like Morgan Geekie who's new to the team. I think one of these guys are going to have to step up huge for the Bruins to kind of get the President's Trophy level caliber team back and to make that push.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be weird to see because, like they said in this article, Krejci was such a great center and a great veteran leader that is hard to find these days. And when you're getting him at only 1 million AAV, it's going to be hard to find somebody who can fill that role as well as Krejci and can put up that many points. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bruins organization do now. Do they make a trade? Do they pick up a free agent? Because there's still a few out there. Patty Kane. Obviously, I wouldn't want to see him go to Boston, but you never know. He might make his way there now with the departure of these 2 veterans. But what do you think about that, Mark? Do you think there's any chance at all that Patty Kane makes his way to Boston now?
I think it's a situation where Patty Kane would add a lot of offense. I know this multiple surgeries and kind of taking a step back. Did take a toll. So it's one of those things I think you almost need to lead into more of like a defensive minded, like a big leader that can play down the middle. Because like I said, like Charlie Coyle's great. I love Pavel Zacha. I think Morgan Geekie is going to be one of the best players. Well, the best steal of a contract this year. But it almost feels like you don't have that like captaincy kind of coming through. You don't have that guy that has a lot of experience, as this team didn't go too far last year. And I think if you can get an older guy that could even slot into your 3rd or 4th line, I think it'd be huge for the team.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there. Obviously Patty Kane's going to be looking for a lot, and I don't think that Boston's cap will allow for that. But it'd be interesting to see if he does go there because, he's just such a great player and such a veteran presence. And like you said, like right now, this team doesn't really have a leader. They have Marchand, who is really the only veteran left on the team right now, which kind of sucks because when you have these are their core 3 and 2 of them just left, and it sucks. And well, obviously Chara was in there before too, but like, we don't talk about Chara, but their whole out of their core 4 over our whole lifetime of watching hockey, 3 of them are now retired. So it's going to be interesting to see what this Boston Bruins team does this season. But Bruins fans, I'd say hold out some hope because I think they're still a playoff team. I think they'll still sneak in there. But I'd like to hear, like, if there's any Bruins fans watching this, I'd like to hear what your whole take is on this situation. Now, obviously, you're happy for these guys. They've both played their best hockey of their careers, and all their seasons were played on your team. Obviously, it sucks to see them go. It's going to be different look without them. But I'd like to hear your take on this. Obviously, what do you think this Boston Bruins team needs now to continue their success and have a big playoff push this year?
I like as well. I mean, if you need leadership.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so guys, if you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to leave a like below and drop a subscribe. We're trying to hit 250 before the season starts. We're getting pretty close there now, so thank you guys for your support again. I've been Casey alongside my co-host Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.